Hello and welcome to this India Today special. Right through this Sushant Singh Rajput controversy, India Today's aim has been to get you the real newsmakers, the people who really knew the actor and therefore have locus to speak on him with credibility. Today we are joined by one such person. I am joined by the lawyer of Sushant Singh Rajput. She specializes in media and entertainment. My guest at the moment is Priyanka Khemani. She's breaking her silence on this contentious issue that has captured so much of media attention. Appreciate your joining us, Priyanka. First of all, for our viewers, your nature of your relationship with Sushant Singh Rajput, were you handling all his legal matters, his business matters, and if so, for what duration of time?
Hi Rajdeep, thank you very much for having me. I met Sushant sometime early last year, and I think my role as his lawyer was to look at a variety of legal and business affairs for Sushant. He's also one of our clients who had such varied interests, was ambitious. There was a lot of interesting things on his plate and on his wish list. So I think as someone who worked in very, very close proximity with Sushant all of last year, right till, we unfortunately lost him, I would end up overseeing a lot of the business decisions, companies that were set up or that he wanted to set up, a lot of the new ventures that he wanted to try and put together, as well as everything that happened on the entertainment side, whether it was his endorsements, his films, any upcoming projects, negotiations on his behalf. And then I also handled some of his personal affairs where he would need legal or commercial advice. So pretty much, I think, across the board, anything that needed some sort of commercial or business advice is where I would step in and work very closely with Sushant directly.
So therefore, Priyanka, this your relationship as a celebrity lawyer, in a way, if I may call you that, started from early 2019. Am I correct?
That's right, actually. I was coincidentally introduced to Sushant by his family. His sister, who's also Priyanka, is the one that brought me in for the first time, and then that's how Sushant and I met. And I think from that point onwards, we worked with him across the board on everything that's happened in 19 and 20.
You know, it's significant you're saying that his sister, who's also named Priyanka, brought you in, because in his diary he mentioned something about he uses the word Priyanka in terms of certain business decisions. So presumably that's not the sister, that's you in that context. I'm presuming that.
Yeah, I've had quite a few people reach out to me noticing that. So it's possible that the reference is to me.
Okay, let's therefore come to the big story that's building, because one of the big angles here in this story has been Sushant's relationship with his girlfriend Rhea Chakrabarti. Was it also a business relationship? Because there are three companies that apparently Sushant had set up. There was one company in 2018 which explored augmented and virtual reality, a second company in 2019 which is called Vivid Ridge Reality X. It includes the name of Rhea Chakrabarti. Her family members, including her brother, were reportedly a director on the company, and then he wants to form a third company, Front India for World Foundation. In all these three companies, was Rhea Chakrabarti his business partner? That is becoming a critical issue, the so-called financial dealings between Sushant and Rhea.
Right. I think, Rajdeep, before I address that and get to the bottom of this, I think it's important to take one step back and understand the personality that Sushant was, right? And I think once you start looking at it in that context, a lot of these businesses that were being set up or a lot of decisions that were made starts to make a lot of sense. He is one of those few clients who I wouldn't be surprised, had he been around 2 years from now, 5 years from now, if we saw him having a completely different career. And I say that not because of, that acting was it and that he had his fill, but simply because of the personality, right? He's a man that was talented, that had varied interests. And I think, so a large part of what Sushant spoke about is about him wanting to do things just beyond Bollywood, beyond movies. I think for him, it wasn't the end all and be all, his career as an actor. And I think once you start looking at him from that lens and trying to understand the perspective that Sushant brought to the table, a lot of his decisions start to make a lot of sense. So coming to the companies and the businesses that he set up, so 2000, the other company that he has, I don't think Rhea or Shouvik have any part to play in that company that was set up in 2018. And it was actually even before my time and before I started advising Sushant, but I did look into that company because it was a venture that was to set up, but I don't think much happened. However, I think when I met Sushant, the idea, like I said, was still to try and do a whole bunch of different things in virtual reality, in augmented reality. He had a keen interest as far as space was concerned, whether it was educating children to send them to outer space, to provide scholarships. So I think when Sushant and I started talking about first setting up his company, it was from the point of view of giving him the ability, giving him a vehicle that he could use to make all of these different things happen. And, like any advisor would, it's you zero down on what the business objects are and set up an entity with that specific objective. Now, I think that was the reason why Vivid Rage was set up, right? For anyone who looks at the objects of the company, it will list out all of these things that I've just said. Coming to Rhea and Shouvik's role in the company, like any company is required to be set up, we did need a minimum of 2 individuals as promoters and directors in the company. I think at that point of time, given that both of them were together, it was a question of setting something up. Again, the goal, I don't think, was as much as to create a business partnership, but really for Sushant, the goal was that this is the business that I want to do. I think it was immaterial who he did it with. What was more critical or relevant for us to understand is that these are the ventures that he wanted to set up, that he wanted to put together. And really speaking, it was just, there were a certain set of people in his life, so we thought it's simpler to set it up in this fashion. In fact, I know that there's been so much speculation about this, but if someone just were to even look at the records of the company, which are all freely available online, it's very self-explanatory. You have 3 people who are all equal shareholders. Everyone's equally put in the money towards share subscription of the company. It's just the most routine manner in which you would set up any new organization or any new entity. There's a lot of speculation that great investments were being made or monies were transferred, but no such thing happened. In fact, my role as his advisor was to make sure that we were making decisions that were sound, that were well thought through, even if it included making decisions that were commercial in nature, that we were doing it in a manner that would not adversely impact anybody's interest in the larger scheme of things.
Now, you were saying that in this business, Sushant, Rhea and his brother had invested an equal amount really to get the business kick-started. That there were no financial transactions taking place beyond the 3 once that initial amount had been paid. I was told it was around 33,000 rupees each that they put into the company. I want to understand, were there financial transactions then that took place? Because presumably Sushant had his film career and the monies that he was earning at that time were coming from his film career. What was the nature of this financial relationship? Was it purely therefore 3 companies set up without any business being transacted? Where was the money therefore that Sushant was earning going into, and was Rhea involved at all in those accounts, or did Sushant handle his accounts on his own, or did you handle it for him?
No. So, like I said, Rajdeep, I was just his legal and commercial advisor, but I'm not the best person to talk about how he handled his finances. That's something that, Sushant, to the best of my knowledge at least, Sushant made his own decisions when it came to handling his finances. He would seek advice, seek counsel, and as was my job, along with, even, say, for example, as accountant, we would give advice, lend counsel, but ultimately the Sushant that I know made his own decisions. And that would include decisions that dealt with his finances.
But you have shared this with the Mumbai Police and the Enforcement Directorate, whatever you know, have you put it before them?
Yes, so not with the Enforcement Directorate because I haven't been requested to remain present, but definitely with the Mumbai Police. I think I was one of the first few people whose statement was recorded, and yes, it's my duty to cooperate with any sort of investigation, and I have let them know whatever, to the best of my knowledge, was available with me and what I knew was happening.
You said that his sister Priyanka was the one who, in a sense, introduced you or brought you, drafted you in early 2019. What was the relationship Sushant shared with his family and his sisters in particular?
So, unfortunately, I must confess, Rajdeep, that is something that I'm not, I wasn't privy to. After Priyanka made the initial introduction, it was pretty much me and Sushant that interacted directly on all aspects, and none of it involved him having to discuss or divulge the kind of equation that he shared with family or family members. So, like I said earlier, the scope of my advice to him was more personal, more one-on-one, more focused on what his personal and personal career and business ambitions were.
Let me therefore focus, since you knew him one-on-one personal basis as a client would know, or a lawyer would know his or her client, this whole aspect that Sushant was depressed, did he strike you between 2019 and 2020 June at any stage as being depressed? Let's be very clear, the physiotherapist report suggests so. What was your sense?
Quite honestly, Rajdeep, I am not professionally qualified to comment on his state of mind. I think I'm not a doctor. I haven't seen any of these reports or not privy to any of these conversations that he would have had with his therapist or psychologist. So I don't think I'm the best person to comment on his state of mind.
So at no stage, so when you first heard that Sushant had committed suicide, what was your sense? That this was something that completely hit you like a bolt from the blue?
I was deeply shocked, deeply heartbroken that he would do something, that he would have taken a step as extreme as this. But I must say this, that when I sit back,
yes, go ahead.
When I sit back and if I have to think to myself, deep down in my gut, Rajdeep, and as heartbroken and as devastated it makes me feel, I know it was his decision. And I say this because, that's what I'm inclined to believe, given the Sushants that I knew. He was a man who made his own decisions at the end of the day. Sure, he had a lot of things that he wanted to do. He would change his mind frequently, and who doesn't? I mean, when you have the kind of ambition and the kind of things that you want to accomplish, it happens to the best of us. But and he would listen to advice, he would discuss, he would brainstorm on a whole bunch of issues. But ultimately, the man I knew was the man who always made his own decisions. I have not known him to be someone who was influenced by any external factors or persons. In fact, if at all, I can go a step further to say that he was certainly someone who didn't care much about opinions or optics or, oh, how is this going to look? I think if he did, he would be a very different person, and we would not be discussing a lot of the things that are being speculated about in the media.
But the question, of course, is why, what would make an individual take this ultimate step? I mean, that is the uncertainty. You seem to suggest to me that you believe he was someone who took every decision on his own. He didn't rely on what society would have to say, but what would prompt him to take such a decision? You have no clue. His finances were fine, am I correct? He had no financial problems?
I know that this is again one of the things that is being no. Let me put it this way. There was certainly no lack of opportunity or work when it came to Sushant. And I think for any professional, that's always a good place to be in, where you are choosing what you want to do next, whether or not you want to do it at all. So this speculation that, he was running out of opportunities or there wasn't enough on the table, that certainly is untrue.
The reason I'm asking you this, because linked to that is the belief that his contracts, especially his earlier contract with Yash Raj Films, had in a way prevented Sushant from exploring other opportunities, that a number of producers, directors were reluctant to work with him or were told not to work with him because of an earlier contract that he had. Let's be very clear. You are telling me that Sushant was not short of film opportunities or advertising opportunities or brand building opportunities. Am I correct?
100%. There was absolutely no dearth of work.
So there should be no reason why Sushant should feel that the film industry was in some way targeting him. The fact that he had been denied awards, of course, is a subjective question, whether he should have gotten an award for Chichore or the other films that he had done. Did he ever talk about this, a feeling that, you know, as you said, self-made man, but did he feel in some way that, that the film industry was being unfair to him? Did he ever carry any of that burden when he spoke to you?
I think when Sushant and I discussed the entertainment business in general, there was, like I said, he's not a man who, you know, who would have been bogged down or cared about being included in a certain manner, right? But I think the one thing that he did feel strongly about, or at least feel particularly had a point of view when it came to that, was, you know, how we all tend to put on a veneer, especially when it comes to the entertainment business, right? It's all about projecting a certain persona, behaving in a certain way, talking in a certain manner. You're not being your true, authentic self. And I think that's one thing that Sushant felt that he couldn't do. So if at all anything, that the one thing that Sushant and I discussed was not as much as, you know, oh, I'm being isolated. I don't think that was ever a topic of discussion. But what we discussed was that, you know, if it's okay for everybody else to do it, it's certainly something that I will not do, because I believe in being my true, authentic self. And I think to that extent, if anything was limiting or inhibiting him from doing that, or if someone felt a different way about that, I think he made his decision quite clearly that I'm going to be my version and there is no other version. So that was his take as far as this is concerned. To the best of my knowledge, like I said again, I don't... we had enough and more film opportunities that were being presented. He was actually open to looking at a lot of different avenues. In fact, even during the lockdown, I remember having a conversation about what next, what do we want to explore, and things like that. So I certainly wouldn't say that people may have their opinions, and we all do, right, when it comes to talent and how we think about, you know, we're very quick to judge whether something's easy, difficult. In fact, more often than not, the one thing that I particularly hate and experience is how, and everyone has second-hand knowledge, right? And that just sort of is passed off as if you're authority on this person's behavior. Oh, this person's very difficult. But more often than not, the source that it's coming from has had very little experience with the talent directly. But you often hear all of these loose statements being made. And I think all of that is really more for us to introspect that in light of this bigger issue that has happened, what are we doing on that front? And I know it's sort of spiraled into all of these different directions with a bunch of different conspiracy theories. I'm certain that if Sushant was around, it's not something that he would endorse or be happy about. And we're really, in that sense, diminishing his life and certainly his death.
You know, the fact is, of course, as I said, his diary even seemed to suggest he had Hollywood dreams. So he really wanted to go well beyond perhaps the Hindi film industry as well. But I want to ask you this, Priyanka. Did you hear of Disha Salian, who apparently worked for a brief while with Sushant and tragically also died a week later, and her death has also become the subject of much speculation? Did you meet Disha? Did you know that Disha was partly working with Sushant?
I've never met Disha, and in fact, I'm glad that you bring this up, because I know that there's been a lot of speculation and the two things have been linked, which is absolutely bizarre, illogical. If, you know, given that I was someone who worked so closely with Sushant and looked at endorsements and everything else that he did, I did not have any interaction or email exchange or ever met or spoken to her. She was someone who was brought on board very, very recently, just in the last few months, and before we knew it. We were in this lockdown. In fact, I remember that the day the news broke out about this girl, I remember reaching out to Sushant and telling him that, look, our names, your name's being drawn into it. And he had not realized it till that point of time when I reached out and told him. He said, how did you happen to read it? So that's really saying something, isn't it, about how connected or how the two things are linked or lack thereof. So no, I've not had any interaction with Disha whatsoever.
Did you know about? Did you know who Sushant's friends were? Whether they involved any politicians, other film stars, or were you only aware of Rhea being his main friend?
No, even with I did have a sense of who his other friends were, and again, a lot of names that we're seeing, a lot of speculation that's going on. Certainly none of those people. I know even in terms of politicians, the names that have been doing the rounds, I have never had Sushant mention them, never seen him meet them. We did have certain occasions to celebrate where, one would have close friends and family around, and I've certainly not seen any of these people present on those occasions or known Sushant to have any interactions or meeting with them.
There are reports that Sushant was paying the EMIs of his former girlfriend Ankita Lokhande, her flat. That in a sense Rhea's family was living off him is one charge which is made in a section of the media. Any of this, to your knowledge, does it have a basis? Was he someone who spent a lot of money? I know he bought himself a Maserati, but his wealth itself, was it being spent on others? What was he spending it on?
Again, I wouldn't know about how he decided to spend his money. Sure, Sushant was fond of, he whatever were his hobbies, like his cars, his telescope, and he would be attached to those things. But other than that, how he dealt with his personal finances beyond advice, I am not privy to that.
Let me therefore ask you in conclusion, do you go along with the theory that someone conspired to kill Sushant, someone who in your view had all these great dreams and was a man who you very clearly said today took his own decisions, very strong-willed in that sense? Do you believe the conspiracy theories, or do you believe that maybe there was something, that he was mentally ill, he was depressed, didn't perhaps let it out and could have taken that ultimate decision? What's your sense?
Like I said, Rajdeep, earlier in my conversation with you, as devastating as it is and as shocked as we all are, deep down, I know that I'm not inclined to believe the conspiracy theories. And if I have to believe something, my gut tells me that it unfortunately was his decision. I wish he hadn't done it. I wish it would have been different. We as a society spoke about these things differently, but I would say, at least in my view, I'm not inclined to believe these theories that are doing the rounds. And by no means am I trying to defend someone or suggest that the investigating authorities should not continue doing what they have been tasked with. But for the love and memory of the person that we all knew Sushant to be, we're just, whatever we're doing, whatever conspiracy theories we have, we're just reducing his life, his legacy. And I think that's all that I'd say in conclusion.
Priyanka, you've spoken to us in a manner that a few others have on this story. You knew Sushant intimately over the last 20 months, certainly, of his life, and therefore you have the credibility to speak on him. You've given us an insight into the man, and hopefully an interview like this will shed more light rather than the heat which has been spread on this issue. So I thank you so much for coming and breaking your silence here on India Today. Thank you so much, Priyanka.
Thank you, Raj.
Hi everyone, Preeti Chaudhary here. Hope you like this video. For latest news and analysis, like and subscribe to the India Today YouTube channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated. Thank you for watching.